Saturday, July 14th, 2:47 p.m. The thermometer outside First National Bank read 97 degrees, but on the blacktop of Highway 7, it felt closer to 110. Heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves that made the distant gas station look like a mirage. Tyler Morrison didn't care about the heat. He sat behind his card table on the corner of Oak Street and Highway 7, a yellow plastic pitcher sweating beside a stack of paper cups that kept trying to blow away in the occasional hot breeze. His sign, painted in careful blue letters on a piece of cardboard box, leaned against the table leg. $1 lemonade. Help my mom get better. He'd been there since noon. In 2 hours and 47 minutes, he'd sold exactly 3 cups. The first cup had gone to Mrs. Patterson from the post office, who'd given him $2 and told him to keep the change with eyes that looked too sad for the words she was saying. The second went to a truck driver who hadn't even slowed down, just reached out his window, grabbed a cup, and tossed a handful of coins that Tyler was still finding in the grass. The third cup he'd drunk himself when the dizziness started. His mom had told him not to do this. She'd actually cried when she found out, which made him feel worse than the heat or the boredom or the sunburn spreading across his nose. "Baby, this isn't your job," she'd whispered, her voice cracking the way it did when she was trying not to cough. "You're 9 years old. Let me worry about the money." But Mom couldn't worry about anything anymore. Not really. She could barely get out of bed. 3 months ago, Sarah Morrison had been the kind of mom who coached Tyler's Little League team and made pancakes in the shape of dinosaurs and danced in the kitchen while she did dishes. She worked the front desk at the roadside motel, picking up extra shifts whenever she could, and she'd been saving for years to take Tyler to Disney World for his 10th birthday. Then the numbness started. First her fingers, then her hands, then her whole left arm. The doctors in Cedar Falls said it was probably carpal tunnel. The specialists in Des Moines said it was multiple sclerosis. The insurance company said it wasn't their problem. $96,000. That's what the pharmacy wanted for the medication that might slow down her disease. Not cure it. They were very clear about that. Just slow it down. Buy her more time to watch Tyler grow up, to see him graduate, to maybe dance at his wedding someday. The insurance denied the claim. Pre-existing condition. Not medically necessary. The letters came one after another, each one with a different excuse, each one saying the same thing. Your mother isn't worth $96,000 to us. Tyler didn't understand all of it. He was 9. But he understood that his mom was getting worse, and nobody was helping, and the pills she was supposed to take had run out 2 weeks ago. He understood other things too, like how the neighbors who used to bring casseroles had stopped coming by, like how his teacher, Mrs. Henderson, looked at him with pity now instead of pride, like how the bills on the kitchen table grew taller every week while the food in the refrigerator grew scarcer. His mom thought he didn't notice. She'd gotten good at hiding her tears, waiting until she thought Tyler was asleep to let them fall. But Tyler wasn't asleep. He lay in his bed every night, listening to her cry through the paper-thin walls of their little house, feeling the weight of helplessness press down on his chest like a stone. He'd tried everything a 9-year-old could think to try. He'd collected aluminum cans from the roadside ditches, earning $3.47 in recycling fees. He'd offered to mow lawns, but the summer drought had turned everyone's grass brown, and nobody was mowing. He'd even asked Pastor Williams if there was some kind of church fund that could help, but Pastor Williams had just patted his head and said he'd pray for them, which Tyler was pretty sure wasn't the same thing as writing a check. The lemonade stand was his last idea, His best idea. He'd seen kids do it on TV, raising money for sick puppies and homeless shelters and other good causes. If it worked for puppies, he figured, maybe it could work for his mom. He'd woken up at 5 in the morning to mix the lemonade, using the last of the sugar and all but one lemon from the fruit bowl. He'd painted the sign himself, each letter carefully shaped, each word a prayer. He'd wheeled the card table out to the corner before the sun was fully up, determined to catch the early morning traffic. That had been 7 hours ago. Now the sun was at its peak. The lemonade was warm, and Tyler's hope was starting to fade like the letters on his sign. A car passed without slowing, then another, then a pickup truck that actually sped up, like the driver was afraid the kid on the corner might try to sell him something. Tyler adjusted the sign, straightened the cups, poured himself another half cup of lemonade that tasted more like warm sugar water than anything resembling a lemon. He thought about packing up. He thought about dragging the table back home, telling his mom the stand had been a huge success, and hiding the 3 crumpled dollars in his shoe so she wouldn't see how little he'd actually made. He could lie about it. He was getting good at lying, little lies, the kind that kept his mom from worrying more than she already did. But lying felt wrong, and quitting felt worse. So Tyler Morrison stayed at his post, and he waited for someone, anyone, to notice that a little boy was trying to save his mother's life, $1 at a time. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that the biggest miracles sometimes start with a card table, a pitcher of warm lemonade, and a child who refuses to give up on the person he loves most. The rumble started as a distant vibration, something Tyler felt in his chest before he heard it with his ears. At first, he thought it was thunder. There'd been talk of storms coming through later. But the sky was blue and cloudless, the sun a white disk that hurt to look at. Then he saw them. Motorcycles. Dozens of them, pouring off the highway exit ramp like a river of chrome and black leather. They filled his entire field of vision, an endless stream of headlights and exhaust pipes and bearded faces behind sunglasses. The sound was overwhelming. Not aggressive exactly, but enormous. Inescapable. Tyler gripped his pitcher so hard his knuckles went white. He'd heard stories about bikers. His friend Jake's older brother said they were criminals who sold drugs and beat people up for looking at them wrong. His Sunday school teacher had once mentioned them as an example of the lost who needed prayer. The gas station across the street, Garcia's Fuel and Food, had a sign in the window that said, "We reserve the right to refuse service." Tyler had never seen a motorcycle gang in person. Now there were 40, 50, maybe more, pulling into that gas station parking lot like a wave crashing against a shore. His first instinct was to run. Just grab the pitcher and the cardboard sign and sprint home. Forget about the lemonade money. Forget about everything. He was a small kid on a big, empty corner, and those men looked like they could crush him without even trying. But then he thought about his mom, about the way she looked this morning, too weak to lift her head off the pillow, about the pharmacy bill on the kitchen table, about how she'd said, "I'm so tired, baby. I'm just so tired." Tyler Morrison stayed at his post. The bikers dismounted one by one, stretching legs and backs after what must have been a long ride. They wore matching vests, black leather with patches Tyler couldn't read from this distance, and most of them headed straight for the air-conditioned convenience store without glancing his way. But one of them stopped. He was the biggest man Tyler had ever seen in real life. Bald head gleaming with sweat, gray beard that reached halfway down his chest, arms covered in faded tattoos that told stories Tyler couldn't begin to read. His vest had more patches than anyone else's, including one that said President in gold letters beneath a roaring skull. The man pulled off his sunglasses and looked across the two-lane highway at Tyler's lemonade stand. His eyes were the blue of winter ice. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the man started walking. Tyler's heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. The man's boots crunched on the gravel shoulder, then thudded on the hot asphalt of Highway 7. He moved with the slow certainty of someone who'd never had to hurry for anything in his life. Cars slowed down to let him pass, not because the law said they should, but because something about his presence demanded it. He crossed the road in about 10 steps, though it felt to Tyler like it took an hour, and then he was there, standing in front of the card table, casting a shadow that seemed to swallow Tyler whole. "Son," the man said. His voice was like gravel in a cement mixer. "What are you selling?" Tyler opened his mouth, but no words came out. He tried again. "La lemonade, sir, $1. The man looked at the pitcher, at the paper cups, at the handwritten sign that Tyler had spent an hour making the night before. "Help your mom get better," he read slowly. "What's wrong with your mom?" "She's sick." The words came out in a rush now that the dam had broken. "She's got MS. That's multiple sclerosis. And she needs medicine, but the insurance won't pay for it, and the pharmacy won't give it to her without money, and I've been saving, but I only have $47, and I've been out here all day, and nobody stops, and I don't know what else to do, because she just keeps getting worse, and—" "Hey." The man held up a massive hand, and Tyler stopped mid-sentence. "Breathe, kid. Just breathe." Tyler breathed, in and out, in and out. The man studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in those ice-blue eyes, a softening that Tyler hadn't expected and couldn't quite understand. "What's your name?" "Tyler. Tyler Morrison." "Tyler Morrison." The man nodded slowly. "I'm Bull. That's what people call me anyway. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honest. You hear me?" Tyler nodded. "Is this real? What you're doing here? Is this for real? You're not raising money for video games or telling me some story 'cause you think I'm an easy mark?" "No, sir." Tyler felt the tears coming and fought them back with everything he had. "It's real. My mom's name is Sarah, and she's 38 years old. And she used to make dinosaur pancakes, and now she can't even get out of bed. I just want to help her. I don't know how else to help her." Bull was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his gravel voice was softer than Tyler had heard it. "Where's your dad?" "Gone, since I was 4. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a dad." Tyler looked down at his pitcher. "It's just us. It's always been just us." Bull turned and looked back at the gas station. 46 men and women in matching vests were watching from across the highway, waiting. He raised 2 fingers to his mouth and whistled, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the summer heat like a knife. Every single biker stood up straighter. Bull made a gesture Tyler didn't understand, something with his hands that looked almost like sign language. Then he turned back to Tyler. "How much lemonade you got, son?" Tyler blinked. The pitcher's almost full. And there's more mix at home. Gonna need you to make more." Bull reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. A lot more. He placed a $100 bill on the table. "That's for the first cup." Tyler stared at the bill. He'd never seen $100 in his life. Not in real life. Not all in one piece like that. His hands were shaking as he reached for a paper cup. "No, no, no." Bull waved the cup away. "I don't want the lemonade yet. I want you to watch." He turned back toward the gas station and raised his voice, a boom that echoed off the nearby buildings. "Iron Thunder, form up." If you're enjoying this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to see it. Now, back to the story. What happened next would stay with Tyler Morrison for the rest of his life. They came across the highway in waves, not running, not rushing, but moving with purpose. 46 men and women in leather vests, their boots striking the pavement in something that wasn't quite a march, but wasn't far off. Cars stopped. A truck driver got out to watch. Someone in the gas station was holding up a phone, recording. They formed a line, an actual line, stretching down the sidewalk and around the corner, every single one of them waiting to buy lemonade from a 9-year-old boy on the hottest day of the year. Tyler couldn't believe what he was seeing. These people, these leather-clad, tattooed strangers, were lining up like they were waiting for ice cream at the county fair. Some of them were laughing and joking with each other. Others were pulling out their phones, snapping pictures of the sign, texting friends. A few were wiping their eyes, though they were trying hard not to let anyone see. One biker, a massive man with a beard that reached his belly and arms like tree trunks, was crying openly, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks into his beard. 40 years ago, Tyler heard him say to the man next to him, "My mom got sick. Nobody helped us. Nobody even tried. She died in our kitchen because we couldn't afford the hospital." "I know, brother," the other man said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "That's why we're here." The line kept growing. More bikers who had been inside the gas station emerged, saw what was happening, and joined the back. People in cars slowed down to watch, some pulling over to get out and see. A woman in a minivan started crying and handed Tyler a $20 bill through her window before driving away. "What's happening?" Tyler asked Bull, who was standing beside the table like a guardian angel made of leather and metal. "Something good, kid. Something real good." The first one in line was a woman. She had long black hair with silver streaks pulled back in a braid, and her vest said "Mama Bear" beneath her club patches. She smiled at Tyler, and her smile was the warmest thing he'd felt all day. "Hey there, sugar," she said. "I'll take 2 cups, and you're gonna need help with that pitcher. I can see you're running low." I have mix at home." "Then let's go get it." She looked back at the line. "Ghost, come watch the table. This young man and I are going to his house to make more product." A lean man with a shaved head and military posture stepped forward. Dog tags glinted at his neck. "Copy that. Tyler, you trust me to watch your stuff?" Tyler looked at his lemonade stand, the pitcher, the cups, the sign, and then at the man called Ghost, who had the kind of eyes that said he'd seen things but chosen to be kind anyway. "Yes, sir." "Then get going. We're thirsty." Tyler led Mama Bear down Oak Street to the tiny house where he lived with his mother. He kept glancing back at her, this stranger in leather and silver who walked beside him like they'd known each other for years. "You're not what I expected," he finally said. Mama Bear laughed. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Something scary." "Oh, we can be scary when we need to be." She put a hand on his shoulder, a warm, steady weight. "But we're also moms and dads and grandparents. We've got kids of our own, jobs to go to, people we love. The vests just mean we found a family that chose us." "A family that chose you?" "Blood makes you related, mijo. Loyalty makes you family. The Iron Thunder took me in when I had nothing. Now we look out for each other." She paused. "And sometimes We look out for other people too. People like you and your mom. Tyler thought about that as they walked. He'd always thought family meant the people you were born with. Your mom and dad and maybe some aunts and uncles. He'd never considered that family could be something you chose. Something that chose you back. How did they take you in? Tyler asked. The club, I mean. Maria, that was her real name, she told him, was quiet for a moment, her boots crunching on the gravel shoulder of Oak Street. 23 years ago, I was married to a bad man. Very bad. He used his fists more than his words, if you understand what I'm saying. Tyler nodded solemnly. One night, he went too far. Put me in the hospital. I had nowhere to go when I got out. No family, no money, no hope. Maria's voice was steady, matter of fact, like she was reading a weather report. Bull was visiting someone else at the hospital, one of our brothers who'd been in an accident. He saw me in the hallway, crying, trying to figure out how I was going to survive. And he stopped. Just like he stopped for me today. Just like that. He asked me what was wrong. I told him. And he said, well, that's not going to happen anymore. Maria smiled at the memory, fierce and fond at the same time. The club put me up in a safe house, paid for my divorce lawyer, made sure my ex-husband understood that if he ever came near me again, he'd answer to 47 brothers who didn't take kindly to men who hit women. What happened to him? Moved to another state. Last I heard, he's afraid to leave his house after dark. Her smile turned proud. And I've been riding ever since, 23 years. I've seen the Iron Thunder do things that would break your heart and put it back together in the same afternoon. Like today? Like today. She squeezed his shoulder. Exactly like today. They reached the house, a small one-story with peeling paint and a yard that needed mowing. The porch railing was loose on one side, and the screen door had a tear in it that Tyler had patched with duct tape 3 times. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and Tyler kept it as clean as he could. He hesitated at the door. My mom's inside. She's not well. That's okay. Can I meet her? She might be sleeping. Then I'll be quiet. They went inside. The house was clean but worn, every surface scrubbed but showing its age. The kitchen was tiny, barely room for 2 people, and the refrigerator hummed with the labored sound of an appliance that was working harder than it should have to. Tyler navigated the space with practiced ease, pulling a giant container of lemonade mix from under the sink and a bag of sugar from the top shelf, stretching on his toes to reach it. Tyler? A weak voice from the back bedroom. Baby? Is that you? It's me, Mom. I brought, a friend, Maria called out. My name's Maria. I was hoping I could say hello. Silence. Then, come back. The bedroom was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. A small fan oscillated on the nightstand, pushing warm air around the room without doing much to cool it. Sarah Morrison lay in bed, propped up on pillows that seemed to be holding her more than she was holding them. Her hair was unwashed, her face pale, but her eyes, green like summer leaves, still had life in them when she looked at her son. A prescription bottle sat on the nightstand. Empty. It had been empty for 16 days. Mija, Maria said softly. I'm Maria Vasquez. I ride with the Iron Thunder MC. Your son is the bravest young man I've ever met. Sarah's eyes moved from Maria to Tyler, confusion giving way to something else. Fear, maybe, or hope, or some combination that hadn't been invented yet. Her face was pale, almost gray, and the circles under her eyes looked like bruises. The oversized sweatshirt she wore hung off her frame like she was a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Maria had seen this look before. on the faces of women fleeing abusive homes, on her own face, 23 years ago, when she'd stared at herself in a hospital bathroom mirror and wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. It was the look of someone who had stopped believing things could get better. Someone who had made peace with losing everything. "What's happening?" Sarah asked. "Your boy set up a lemonade stand on Highway 7. He made a sign that says he's trying to help you get better." Maria sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the woman beneath the covers. Right now, there are 47 bikers waiting in line to buy his lemonade. They're not going anywhere until every cup is sold, and they're not paying $1. "I don't understand." "You don't have to understand. You just have to let us help." Maria took Sarah's thin hand in her own. "Can you do that? Can you let us help you?" Sarah Morrison looked at her son, this 9-year-old who had set up a lemonade stand in 100-degree heat because he didn't know what else to do, because he loved her so much he would stand in the sun all day for the chance to save her. She started to cry. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when something breaks open inside you, and all the fear you've been holding finally has somewhere to go. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I can do that." Maria held her hand until the tears slowed. Then she looked at Tyler. "All right, mijo, let's make some lemonade. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Gentle Wheels." Because what happened next, when Tyler carried those pictures back to find a line that had only grown longer, proved that sometimes the people the world teaches you to fear are the first ones to show up when nobody else will. They made 6 more pitchers of lemonade. Tyler mixed while Maria carried, and by the time they walked back to the corner of Oak and Highway 7, the scene had transformed. The line was longer. Not just bikers now. People from town had started joining. The mail carrier, still in uniform, had parked his truck and was waiting behind a biker twice his size. 2 teenagers from the high school were taking selfies with the bikers, who obliged with the patient amusement of people who understood they were part of something bigger than a photo opportunity. An elderly man in overalls and a John Deere cap was talking to Ghost about engine maintenance, and Ghost was listening like the old man was teaching a graduate seminar. Bull was standing off to the side when Tyler returned, talking into a cell phone with the quiet intensity of a man conducting business. Tyler caught fragments as he set the fresh pitchers on the table. The whole chapter, I don't care if they're in the middle of Sunday dinner. How much does she need? 96? Get the pharmacy on the line. I want to talk to the pharmacist directly. No, not tomorrow. Tonight. The line moved slowly and deliberately. Each biker stepped up, handed Tyler a bill. 10s, 20s, 50s, more hundreds, and accepted a paper cup of lemonade like it was communion wine. Some of them drank it there, standing in the sun, savoring it. Others poured it out quietly in the grass and came back around for seconds, dropping another bill on the pile each time. "You're not even drinking it," Tyler said to a young biker who had just handed him $50 for his 3rd cup. The biker grinned. "Kid, I hate lemonade. Makes my teeth hurt. But this isn't about the lemonade." "Then what's it about?" "It's about showing up. It's about making sure you know that when nobody else comes, we do." A woman named Diesel, Tyler learned later that she was a diesel mechanic from Des Moines, hence the name, bought 4 cups and asked Tyler to tell her about his mom. He told her about the dinosaur pancakes and the Little League coaching and the way his mom used to dance while doing dishes. And Diesel listened with her arms crossed and her jaw set, and tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "Your mom sounds like a warrior," Diesel said. "She is. She just doesn't know it right now." "Well, you tell her I said so. You tell her Diesel from Des Moines said she's a warrior, and warriors don't quit. A biker named Stitch, a pediatric nurse in his day job, which Tyler found both surprising and reassuring, asked about Sarah's medication specifically. He wrote down the names, the dosages, the pharmacy's information, and said he'd make some calls to see if there were patient assistance programs that could help with future refills. The drug companies have programs, Stitch explained, kneeling so he was at Tyler's eye level. Most people don't know about them. That's by design. But I know where to look. You'd do that? Brother, I became a nurse because I got tired of watching people suffer when solutions existed. Finding those solutions is literally what I do on my day off. He stood up and handed Tyler a business card. Have your mom call me Monday. We'll figure this out together. By 7 p.m., the table was buried in cash. The sun was finally easing toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber that made the whole scene look like something from a movie. The bikers cast long shadows across the sidewalk, their silhouettes softened by the warm light until they looked less like a motorcycle club and more like a congregation. News vans from 2 different stations had arrived, their cameras capturing everything. A reporter from KWMT tried to interview Bull, who gave her exactly 3 words. Family helps family. She pressed for more. Bull looked at her the way a mountain looks at a cloud and said nothing else. The story was already spreading on social media. Someone had posted a photo of Tyler behind his table, surrounded by bikers, with the caption, "This kid set up a lemonade stand to save his mom." The whole motorcycle club showed up. It had 20,000 shares within an hour. Phone calls started coming into the local police station. Concerned citizens wondering if they should worry about the biker gang that had taken over the intersection of Oak and Highway 7. Sheriff Martinez drove out personally to investigate, took one look at what was happening, and ended up buying 3 cups of lemonade himself. "You boys causing any trouble?" he asked Bull. "Just the good kind, Sheriff." Martinez nodded slowly, the hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Carry on, then." The mayor showed up around 6:30, looking slightly bewildered. She shook Tyler's hand, posed for a photo with Bull and Maria, and announced that the city would be waiving any permit requirements for the lemonade stand in perpetuity. "What does perpetuity mean?" Tyler asked Maria after the mayor left. "It means forever, mijo. It means you can set up your stand whenever you want, and nobody can tell you otherwise." Tyler looked at his table, at the pitcher that had been refilled a dozen times, at the stack of cups that never seemed to run out, at the mountain of cash that represented something far bigger than money. "Forever is a long time," he said. "Yes, it is." Maria smiled. "Better get used to it. If Gentle Wheels has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below, and hit that hype button if you haven't already. Now back to the story. Tyler had stopped trying to count somewhere around $4,000. The sun was finally starting to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that made the whole scene look like something from a dream. His sign had fallen over at some point and been propped back up by a biker named Tiny, who was 6'5" and gentle as a lamb. Bull approached the table as the last biker in line accepted his lemonade, warm now, the ice long since melted. "Tyler." Bull's voice was solemn. "I want you to count that money and tell me what you've got. I've tried. I keep losing track. Then we'll help you." They counted it together, Tyler, Bull, Maria, and Ghost, right there on the card table while the rest of the club stood watch. The bills were wrinkled and sweaty from being passed through so many hands. The coins had mostly been tossed into a cup that Tyler had labeled extra in blue marker though there was nothing extra about any of it. Ghost counted with the precision of a man who'd managed supply chains in the military. Maria sorted bills by denomination. Bull stacked them in neat piles of 500, his massive hands handling the money with a surprising delicacy. When they finished counting, Tyler's hands were shaking. $9,437. That's right. Bull nodded slowly. Now, that's not quite enough for your mom's medicine, is it? No, sir. It's a lot more than I had this morning, but it's not. I know. Bull reached into his vest and pulled out an envelope, thick, stuffed, bulging at the seams. This is from the Iron Thunder Emergency Fund. It's what we set aside for brothers and sisters who need help. Today, your mom became a sister. He handed Tyler the envelope. There's $90,000 in there. Combined with what you raised today, that should cover the first year of your mother's treatment. Tyler stared at the envelope. His brain couldn't process the number. 90,000. That was more money than his mom made in 3 years. That was Disney World and college and a new house all wrapped into one. That was every wish he'd made on every birthday candle, every prayer he'd whispered at bedtime, every desperate hope he'd been afraid to voice out loud. The envelope felt impossibly light for what it held. Why? The word came out as a whisper. You don't even know us. Bull knelt down so he was at Tyler's eye level. Up close, his face was less frightening than Tyler had thought. Just weathered and worn, like a book that had been read too many times but loved more with each reading. When I was about your age, Bull said, my dad got sick. Cancer. My mom worked 3 jobs trying to pay for treatment, and I watched her kill herself trying to save him. Nobody helped us. Nobody showed up. He died broke and tired, and she never recovered from that. Bull put a massive hand on Tyler's shoulder. I started the Iron Thunder 30 years ago because I swore I'd never let another family go through what we did. Not if I could help it. His ice blue eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. What you did today, standing out here in the heat, selling lemonade for $1, believing that somehow you could save your mom, that's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Braver than anything I've ever done. And I've done some things. He stood up. Now, let's go tell your mom the good news. The procession that walked down Oak Street to the Morrison house was unlike anything the town of Cedar Falls had ever witnessed. 47 motorcycles, engines rumbling at a respectful idle, following a 9-year-old boy who was carrying an envelope worth more than most houses on the block. Neighbors came out of their homes to watch. Some of them looked scared. Some of them looked confused. But some of them, the ones who knew Sarah Morrison, who had seen her struggling, who had wondered what would happen to that sweet boy of hers, some of them started to cry. Mrs. Patterson from the post office was standing on her porch, hand over her mouth, tears streaming. The truck driver who'd tossed coins from his window that morning had somehow heard about what was happening and come back, parking his rig at the end of the street, watching from his cab with his hat off and his head bowed. Tyler's mom was waiting on the porch. Maria had called ahead, and Ghost had helped Sarah into the wheelchair and pushed her outside. She hadn't been outside in weeks. The evening light hit her face and she squinted against it, but she didn't look away. She watched the street fill with motorcycles and strangers and something that looked a lot like hope. When she saw her son walking toward her at the head of that unlikely parade, her face crumpled. "Baby," she managed. "Baby, what did you do?" Tyler ran the last few steps and threw his arms around her. The envelope crinkled between them, $90,000 pressed against her heart. "I helped, Mom. I finally helped." Sarah looked up at the bikers filling her driveway, her street, her world. at Bull with his gray beard and Ghost with his dog tags, and Maria with her silver-streaked braid. At 47 strangers who had become, in the space of a single afternoon, the closest thing to angels she'd ever seen. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "I don't know what to say." Bull stepped forward. "Ma'am, you raised that boy. You raised him to be brave and kind and stubborn as a mule. That's thanks enough." He looked at Tyler. "But there's one more thing. The pharmacy closes at 9 tonight. We called ahead. They're expecting us. Maria's gonna ride with you to pick up your mom's medicine. Ghost will stay here with Sarah until you get back." "And you?" Tyler asked. Bull smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from something intimidating into something almost gentle. "I'm gonna sit on your porch and make sure nobody bothers your mom while you're gone. That sound okay?" Sarah was crying too hard to speak. She just nodded. Bull turned to his men and gave a series of hand signals. Within seconds, bikers were taking positions around the house. 2 by the front door, 2 by the back, 4 more stationed along the sidewalk, arms crossed, faces serious. "Is all this really necessary?" Sarah asked. "Probably not," Bull admitted, "but it makes us feel useful, and it'll give the neighbors something to talk about." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. It was a weak sound, more breath than voice, but it was the first laugh Tyler had heard from her in months. It sounded like water after a long drought. Not much, but enough to prove the well wasn't dry. The ride to the pharmacy was something Tyler would never forget. Maria let him sit in front of her on the massive Harley, his hands gripping the handlebars while hers covered his own. The wind rushed past like a living thing, carrying away the heat and the fear and the months of helplessness that had been building inside him like a dam. For 12 minutes, Tyler Morrison wasn't a scared kid with a sick mom and no money. He was flying. The streets were empty this time of night, just streetlights and shadows and the occasional cat darting across the road. The town looked different from the back of a motorcycle. Smaller somehow, more manageable. Like all the problems that had seemed so impossible might actually have solutions if you just looked at them from the right angle. They passed the roadside motel where his mom used to work. The neon sign still flickering, the parking lot half empty. He thought about all those extra shifts she'd picked up, all those hours on her feet, all the tip money she'd saved in the jar on the kitchen counter that was labeled Disney Fund in her careful handwriting. That jar had been empty for 2 months now. She'd used it to pay the electric bill. They passed the school, dark and silent for the summer. They passed the church, where Pastor Williams had promised to pray for them. They passed the diner where the waitresses had given Tyler free pancakes when they'd heard about his mom, sliding the plate across the counter with the kind of casual kindness that pretends it's nothing when it's actually everything. Maria didn't push the speed, but she didn't dawdle either. She rode with the confidence of someone who had spent decades on 2 wheels, navigating corners with a smoothness that made it feel less like driving and more like breathing. "You okay up there?" she shouted over the engine noise. "I'm great," Tyler shouted back, and for the first time in months, he actually meant it. The pharmacy came into view, a small building with a green cross sign and a single car in the parking lot. The pharmacist, Mr. Chen, a tired-looking man in his 50s who'd clearly been waiting for them, had the medication ready at the counter. 18 bottles of various shapes and sizes lined up on the counter like soldiers waiting for orders. Each one had Sarah Morrison's name on it. Each one represented time, time to heal, time to fight, time to watch her son grow up. The gentleman who called explained the situation. Mr. Chen said, his eyes soft behind his glasses. "I have to say, I've been doing this job for 22 years. I've filled prescriptions for thousands of people, but I've never seen anything like what happened today. Neither have I, Maria said. Mr. Chen bagged the medication carefully, double-checking each label, each dosage, each instruction sheet. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a small paper bag. This is a 3-month supply of her supplemental vitamins, the ones that support the MS medication. He pushed the bag across the counter. On the house. You don't have to, Maria started. I've been a pharmacist for 22 years. Most of those years I just fill bottles and ring up charges and watch people struggle to pay. Today, I got to be part of something that actually helped someone. Let me have this. Maria took the bag. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Thank the boy. He looked at Tyler with an expression that was equal parts admiration and heartbreak. He's the one who started all of this with a pitcher and a prayer. They rode back through the falling darkness, the medicine secured in Maria's saddlebags. The night air was cooler now, the brutal heat of the afternoon finally breaking as the stars came out one by one like they'd been waiting for the right moment to show themselves. By the time they reached the house, the scene had changed again. The porch light was on, the one that had been burned out for months. Someone had replaced it. The screen door no longer had duct tape on the tear. The loose porch railing was solid and straight. Ghost was inside, tightening the last screw on the bathroom door hinge that had been squeaking since March. Been meaning to get to that, Tyler heard his mom say weakly from her wheelchair. It's handled now, ma'am, Ghost replied. A biker named Tex, short for Texas, where he'd been born, had mowed the front yard with a push mower he'd found in the garage. The grass was brown from the drought, but at least it was even now, and the edges along the walkway were trimmed clean. Another biker had pulled weeds from the flower beds and discovered a patch of marigolds that Sarah had planted last spring, still alive under the mess, still blooming orange and yellow, like they'd been waiting for someone to notice them. The refrigerator hummed contentedly, no longer laboring, because someone had cleaned the coils in the back, while Ghost had somehow filled it with groceries. Milk, eggs, bread, fruit, vegetables, chicken, cheese. 3 weeks' worth of food that hadn't been there 3 hours ago. Tyler stared at the full shelves for a long moment, remembering how he'd learned to count the items in the fridge each night, tallying what was left, dividing it by the days until his mom's next disability check, calculating whether they'd make it. 9 years old, and he could do that math in his head without thinking about it. He wouldn't have to do that math tonight. Tyler helped his mom take her first dose of medication in 16 days. She cried through the whole thing, but she managed to swallow each pill, and Tyler held the glass of water to her lips and told her she was the bravest person he knew. That's supposed to be my line, she said. We can share it. Bull sat on the porch steps, smoking a cigarette and watching the stars come out over Cedar Falls. Tyler could hear him talking quietly with Ghost through the screen door. Something about a chapter meeting and permanent support, and that insurance company is going to hear from our lawyers. At 11, Maria made sure everyone had eaten. Soup she'd heated on the stove, sandwiches she'd assembled from the groceries Ghost had brought, cookies she'd found in a tin on top of the refrigerator that Tyler said his mom had baked 3 weeks ago, back when she'd had one good day in a row of bad ones. The house felt different, fuller, warmer, like the walls themselves understood that something fundamental had shifted, like a bone that had been broken for months had finally been set. At midnight, the last of the motorcycles pulled away, their taillights disappearing down Highway 7 like red stars falling to earth. Bull was the last to leave. Tyler. His voice was quiet in the summer night. Crickets sang in the grass. The new porch light cast a warm circle around them. I'm gonna leave you my number. Anything happens, anything at all, you call me, day or night, understand? Yes, sir. And don't call me sir. Makes me feel old. He paused. Call me Bull. Or uncle if you want. I've never been an uncle before. Tyler looked at this man, this stranger who had stopped at a lemonade stand and changed everything, who had walked across a hot highway because he saw a sign made by a kid with a prayer and a pitcher and nothing else. Uncle Bull? Yeah? Thank you. Bull knelt down and pulled Tyler into a hug. The leather vest was warm and smelled like motorcycle exhaust and summer air and something else, something Tyler would later learn was called belonging. Thank you, nephew, for reminding me why we do this. Tyler watched the last taillight disappear down the highway. He stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket his mom had made him years ago, feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. It didn't fix everything. Hope never does. The bills were still on the kitchen table. The disease was still in his mom's body. The future was still uncertain in all the ways that futures are uncertain when you're 9 and the world is big and your mom is sick and your dad is gone. But hope is a start, and sometimes a start is all you need. 6 months later, the first snow of winter was falling on Cedar Falls when the motorcycles returned. Not 47 this time, more like 200. Riders from chapters across 3 states who had heard about the boy with the lemonade stand. They'd come for a celebration. Sarah Morrison walked down her front steps under her own power for the first time in 8 months. She was still thin, still tired, still fighting a disease that would never fully let her go. But she was fighting, and she was winning. The medication had done what the doctors promised, slowed the progression, reduced the numbness, given her body the chance to remember what strength felt like. She wasn't dancing in the kitchen yet, but she could stand at the counter. She could make pancakes. She could hold her son without her arms shaking. Tyler stood beside her, holding her hand. He'd grown 3 inches since July. His voice was starting to change. He'd made the honor roll at school for the first time in his life. Bull waited at the bottom of the steps, his leather vest now featuring a new patch, a yellow lemonade stand embroidered above the words, Tyler's Army. Sarah. He tipped an imaginary hat. You're looking well. I'm feeling well. She smiled, and the smile reached her eyes. Because of you. Because of all of you. Because of him. Bull pointed at Tyler. We just showed up. He did the hard part. The party lasted until well after dark. 3 grills appeared in the backyard, manned by bikers who turned out to be surprisingly skilled barbecue chefs. One of them had competed on a reality cooking show, which he mentioned casually while flipping ribs with the focus of a surgeon. The smell of smoking meat filled the air, mixing with the scent of fresh snow and motor oil. Ghost commandeered the karaoke machine someone had brought and delivered a rendition of Sweet Caroline that would sustain the town's gossip circuit for years. He had a surprisingly good voice, deep and clear, and by the 3rd verse, the whole party was singing along. 200 bikers and half the neighborhood standing in the snow, belting out the chorus with the kind of wholehearted commitment that only happens when people stop worrying about how they sound and start caring about how they feel. Children from neighboring houses wandered over, drawn by the noise and the food and the motorcycles. The bikers welcomed them like old friends, letting them sit on the bikes, showing them how the engines worked. Mrs. Henderson showed up with a casserole, the first time she'd visited since Sarah got sick. I should have done more, she told Bull. "When I heard about Sarah, I should have—" "You're here now. That's what matters. Grab a plate." The following July, on the 1-year anniversary, Tyler Morrison set up a lemonade stand on the corner of Oak Street and Highway 7. The sign said, "Free lemonade, because someone helped us once." He gave away 412 cups that day. Bull and Maria and Ghost showed up with the whole club. Mr. Chen, the pharmacist, brought his daughter. The neighbors brought lawn chairs. And Sarah Morrison, standing on her own 2 feet, stronger than she'd been in years, made dinosaur-shaped cookies for everyone. Mr. Chen started a program to help families who couldn't afford their medications. He called it Tyler's Fund. In its first year, it helped 17 families in Cedar Falls get the treatment they needed. The insurance company that had denied Sarah's claim faced a federal investigation after the story went viral. A class action lawsuit resulted in reforms that helped thousands of families across the country get the coverage they'd been promised. Stitch, the pediatric nurse, had found 3 different patient assistance programs for Sarah's ongoing treatment. Her out-of-pocket cost for the second year was $0. Bull kept his word. He called Tyler once a week, every week for the next 10 years, checked in on his homework, gave advice about girls, showed up for every birthday, every graduation, every important moment. When Tyler turned 18 and got accepted to college, the first person in his family to do so, Bull rode 500 miles to hand-deliver a scholarship check the club had raised. "This isn't charity," Bull said, pressing the envelope into Tyler's hands. "This is an investment. We're betting on you, nephew. Don't let us down." Tyler didn't. He studied social work, graduated with honors, got a job at a nonprofit that helped families navigate the healthcare system. All the forms and appeals and bureaucratic nightmares that had nearly broken his mother. He specialized in MS cases. He carried Stitch's business card in his wallet for years, until the ink faded and the edges went soft, and then he laminated it and carried it some more. And every July, no matter where he was or what he was doing, Tyler Morrison set up a lemonade stand. Sometimes it was on the corner of Oak and Highway 7. Sometimes it was in a park near his apartment in the city. Sometimes it was at a children's hospital, where kids who were fighting their own battles could have a free cup of something sweet and hear the story of a boy who'd stood in the sun because he didn't know what else to do. The sign always said the same thing. "Free lemonade, because someone helped us once." Bull passed away in the spring of Tyler's 27th year. Heart attack. Quick, the way he would have wanted it. More than 500 bikers showed up for the funeral in Cedar Falls. They lined the streets from one end of town to the other, engines off, standing beside their bikes in silence. Tyler gave the eulogy. Bull used to say that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, Tyler told the crowd. His voice cracked once on the word shows, but he steadied it the way Bull had taught him. Breathe in, breathe out, say what needs to be said. He showed up for me on the worst day of my life. He showed up for my mom when she needed it most. He showed up for all of us, every single time, no questions asked. He looked out at the sea of leather vests and tearful faces. The best way we can honor him is to do the same. Show up. For each other. For strangers. For anyone who needs help and doesn't know how to ask for it. That's the legacy he left us. That's the family he built. After the service, Maria pressed a small box into Tyler's hands. Inside was the Tyler's Army patch that Bull had worn on his vest for the last decade, and underneath it, a note in Bull's unmistakable handwriting. Nephew, when you were 9 years old, you taught me something I'd forgotten. You reminded me that courage isn't about being strong. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared, even when you don't think you can, even when everyone else has given up. Take care of your mom, take care of the club, take care of everyone who needs someone to show up for them. I love you, kid. Always will. Bull Tyler wore that patch every day for the rest of his life, and every summer, on the anniversary of the day the Iron Thunder rode into Cedar Falls, hundreds of bikers from across the country gather on the corner of Oak Street and Highway 7. They set up lemonade stands. They give away free cups to anyone who passes by. They tell the story of a 9-year-old boy who refused to give up and the strangers who became his family. Because some stories don't have villains. Some stories just have people who see something that needs fixing and decide to fix it, even when nobody asks them to. And it's still being written, one cup of lemonade at a time. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that courage doesn't require size or strength, just a card table, a pitcher, and the refusal to stop trying, please share it. Subscribe to Gentle Wheels for more stories proving that family is built, not born, that the people the world teaches you to fear are sometimes the first ones to show up when nobody else will, and that every single time someone decides to stop walking and start helping, the world gets a little less broken. Tell us in the comments, has a stranger ever showed up for you when nobody else would? Have you ever been the person who stopped when everyone else kept walking? Your stories matter, because every time someone shares a moment like this, it reminds the rest of us that showing up isn't optional. It's everything. Show up. Pour a cup. Be the reason someone believes again. Resources. If you or someone you know is struggling with medical costs or navigating insurance, Patient Advocate Foundation, 1-800-532-5274. Needy Meds, needymeds.org, free resource for medication assistance. National MS Society, 1-800-344-486-7211. Helpline, dial 211 for local assistance with food, housing, and medical support. Medicare Rights Center, 1-800-333-4114.